I will talk to you about A Different History by Sujata Bhatt. So first of all, before analyzing the actual poem, you have to give a brief description of the author. So Sujata Bhatt was born in India in 1956, studied in the United Kingdom and the US, and now she actually lives in Germany. In her life, she had experienced three different cultures: the Indian culture, the American culture, and the German culture. She has had to adapt to all three of them, and now she can't tell which culture is truly hers. The poem is reflecting her past, and she is telling us about the differences in culture. So, as you can see, the poem is written in two stanzas. This is your first stanza, and here your second stanza. So, the first stanza shows that there is a socio-cultural system within the people in India. Within this system, there is to be a golden rule, almost to be respected. We see that the author makes use of various words such as must and all, which shows that the people were forced to obey to the British colonialism and could not actually use their own language. People had to be detached from their culture to learn the new culture. So therefore we already see there's a clash within this part. But now why did the author choose two stanzas? The first stanza already depicts the knowledge of the people and how respect should be present. So as we can see, the Indian people and the Indian culture, or mostly the Asian culture, would tell you that it is a sin to shove a book aside with your foot, which is something which is not forbidden in the European or American culture. Also, you can't actually slam a book down hard on the table because it's a sin. And the fact that she makes use of various words like sin, shove, slam, those S sounds actually reflect sibilances. A sibilance is actually when there's the S sound present for a repetition, alliteration. All the S sound, like the S hissing like a snake sound, is actually called a sibilance. But that's not part of the analysis, though. This goes later through your stylistic devices, but that's just a main part. So, in contrast with the first stanza, we see that the oppressor's tongue is seen as something which would actually murder the new or the old culture of India, and not only India but also the parts of Africa and other countries which were under the British colonialism and imprisonment. All the people were tortured or forced to adopt the new language. This is why we can see that the new generation could actually speak English because they were forced to, while the old people would actually, in front of the soldiers, choose English, but at home they would prefer the normal, typical Hindu or Indian language. The Now let's go through the analytical part. So we see that Sujata Bhatt makes reference to Great Pan. Well, who Great Pan is? Great Pan is actually a god, a Greek god, or goddess as you want. And here we see that she says that he immigrated, but actually the old culture says that Great Pan actually died. He is the only Greek god who died. So therefore, as she says, he immigrated, so therefore he went from a good place to a better place. But this is what Sujata Bhatt is saying. So then we already see a clash between the Greek culture and what she actually says. So why she said he immigrated to India is to show that India is already a good place and that any person would choose India because of its resources, the land, the relief, the beauty of the country. Well, so then you can say the beauty of India, its culture, and blah, blah, blah. This is your part to analyze. So then now we see a stylistic device would be an allusion to Great Pan. So you have to have an effect. Okay, so then he simply emigrated to India, that's it. So then you can relate this to this point. So that's the poem, right? Let me make this one in italic. So then you know. So as you can see, now, here the gods roam freely, disguised as snakes or monkeys. It's very interesting, so she makes use of animal imagery. So as she makes use of animal imagery, we see that the gods are present here. It actually, you can also find it as a this can also be a juxtaposition, because if the gods are not disguised as people, why would they be disguised as animals? If you get my point. So we can relate this to the evolution, and so you can analyze the snakes or monkeys and those imageries. And what's the effect is we get a better understanding of the Indian culture. As we know, in India, people worship gods through various forms, such as you have Shiva and his snake around his neck. And also you have the god Hanuman, who is half monkey. So then now you can actually relate this point to culture, because already if you are part of the Indian community, you will better understand why she made use of these words. Here we see every tree is sacred. Every. Why she made use of the word every? To show that each single piece or part of it must be treated with respect, which is something you can't actually see in other countries because you have destruction of nature. So here you can see the theme of nature and its importance. But you can also see the theme of nature through actually, wait, where is it? Yeah, here. You can relate the theme of nature to there and here. So then why does she consider every tree is sacred? Because what does the tree provide you? A tree is a source of resources such as money, paper, oxygen, and many more. So if you see that a tree is important, you can actually relate to the idea of how without a tree we won't achieve fast. A tree can also be food. So you can't actually live without a tree because a tree would give you all these things. When I say money, I'm not talking about paper money, but like if you actually make use of a tree, like getting fruits, you can sell these and get money out of it. So it's still important. Let's continue our analysis. Through the word sin. The sin is something which is pessimistic. It exemplifies the vast contrast between the two to make a comparison between the human who are mortal and the God who are immortal. But now that particular line, it is a sin to be rude to a book. This is something which is always heard in the Asian community because a book signifies knowledge. And without knowledge, you won't achieve far. So then knowledge gives you education, and education makes you one of a million people to be successful. Because without education, you don't achieve far. So then education gives you personal gain to become someone in the world. So then we can see that she makes use of another time sin, which is repetition. So what can this mean to make use of repetition is to put emphasis So the word sin can also represent how if you actually does something like this, you could actually be punished by the gods because you can't mistreat something like that. Because a book is very important, and the act of shoving a book, here you can see sin, shove, you can see the S sound, actually shows how it is transgress. It's a blunder to do such thing. It's goof. So then if you actually mistreat your book, you might not get education. You might not have access. You will stay stupid. So that's why you will see that the colonial people would dominate you while you be there, but you can't actually do something because you don't have any notion of education. You won't know how to deal yourself or defend yourself. Not in physical defense, but like verbal defense. Because when he will bring his innovations and what's new in his country, what would you say about your country? If your people don't have education, they won't be able to produce things. So then you will have a cultural and social gap because one part of the population would be very intelligent and you would stay stupid and like you won't get developed and you will rely on whatever the colonial people would say. So when if they say do this, as you don't have education, you can't counter argument when you'll be forced to do it. So this is why people focus on education because there, if you don't have education, you can't actually progress in life. And then you will see one day you'll have to go work for someone else and he will treat you very rudely and harshly and your salary would be peanuts because you ain't educated. No education shows no progress. So that's why it was very emphasized there to have education as a mean of improving. So again, we see the repetition of the word sin. It's a negative connotation. It's also a foreshadowing of what will happen. It can also cause suspense, but as you're doing a poem, you can't actually analyze in the suspense and drama. This is mostly through your other texts. So then she continues with her description. She makes use of the word you to make the so you have to be part of the text or poem. Let's say poem because it's more diplomatic. So you have to have respect for the book because the book represents knowledge, as we said. If you treat it in a gentle manner, you will gain yourself from it because the book would willingly give you his knowledge. So then again we see an allusion to Sarasvati. So again, Sarasvati is the gods of art. So it's actually something happy. So then we see that poetry is related to an art. So that's why she mentions her. So the books, of course, hold history, and she's basically saying that we should respect our history, culture, heritage, and most of our prestigious background. Again, you see, she mentions the tree as a resource. So you can't offend the tree because you're actually reading from the tree's paper. So therefore, you should also have respect for the tree, because without the tree, you wouldn't have paper, wouldn't have had paper, and without the paper, you can't gain knowledge. So the tree actually sacrificed herself. So when you can compare, yeah, you have to actually reflect about how we are ready to sacrifice ourselves for nature. No, nature is actually ready to sacrifice itself for us, but we humans will not actually sacrifice ourselves for nature, because nature is not gaining anything from us. We are making use of their resources. We are using trees as food, trees for books, trees for many things. But what are we giving to them? Are we sacrificing ourselves for them? Do we have some sorts of rituals where we sacrifice a human for trees to grow? No, we don't. But why do we do this? It's something which should have been vice versa. So then, here you say, which language has not been the oppressor's tongue? It's a rhetorical question. Which language truly meant to murder someone? Again, a rhetorical question. But here, actually, I think the author is actually trying to point out that colonialism is the one who actually killed culture. Sujata Bhatt wants to convey a message that is what a place is conquered and a few languages brought in. When the conquerors leave, the language is loved by the people. The colonized are not willing to change. They follow the others, and if they are leaving to their own death. So I just mentioned was a note from my teacher. So she says that when we leave, when the colonizers leave, the people would say, oh my God, we're so developed. Why can't we be as developed as them? So then what happened is that they would actually stay there and keep the language that the colonizers brought in, believing that this language connotes development, which is fake, because you can actually develop without using the colonizer's language. So when we see that people fought for this language, they fought for their independence. So we can say that the English language compared to the Indian language, people actually sacrificed themselves for the Indian language to be pushed forward, to develop. You can see this through Gandhi and all. Many people went through torture because they refused to actually speak English. They would be sent to prison. They would do disgusting jobs just because they could not understand or actually want to speak the language. So, in addition to the which language, we see that she's actually having some personal reflection. This phrase exudes an exclusive tone in her phrase, expressing severe criticalness in her expression. So then you can analyze on the rhetorical question and also the repetition. Here you can have an alliteration. here you can meant to murder. So now let's go back to our stylistic devices. Here, when she mentions the unborn grandchildren grow to love a strange language, she says how, like I said earlier, the people are actually more willing to speak English than Indian. So, therefore, we see how it's not something good because as people stop speaking Indian, they lose their culture, they lose everything, their way of praying, their language, their community. Everything is erased and slowly dying. So we see that the poem brings out the poet's discomfort while writing this poem. This is because she has had to go to adapting to a new culture while actually forgetting the old one, and therefore it's like a small ship bringing away all the knowledge and then sinking. So that's not something good. So then we can go up to see, you see again, without, you can comment on the repetition. So then you have an alliteration of S sound, which also is a sibilance, but I think here you have the sibilance. So we can see a lexical field. You have sin, slam, hard. It's danger. She's connotating danger. So I think I have to write it danger. Yeah, so then I think that's all we can comment about. Because actually, the rhyme scheme, I don't think it would be possible to do it now because of all the notes I've added. So then you have the title, the structure, setting, themes. So we found our themes. Let's find some symbols which you can analyze. The book can be a symbol here because the book already signifies knowledge, and we have to be very grateful to have the book because without the book we won't achieve a high place in the society. We would stay backward, and therefore it's something we should be proud of. So then we can see that the author tried to make use of words such as you to make us feel the power of those words. She conveys her message personally to us because if she said we, he would be like, oh yeah, it's like something general. But you is actually targeting yourself, so then you have personal reflection of whether you are doing it right or wrong. So I think I'm done. Thank you.